What is up, my people? This is IceRestrict12, and today we're gonna go ahead and take a look at 5 cards that 100% need to get banned in this upcoming ban list. Now, we are supposed to be receiving a ban list sometime end of August or beginning of September. And just like every ban list season, it's a very exciting time to be a Yu-Gi-Oh player because the speculation of what's gonna get banned, what is gonna come off the ban list, it is just really fun to go over it. You have buyers and sellers who make a pretty big profit of the cards that people are anticipating to come out of the ban list, or sometimes players know for a fact something's gonna get banned. They go and get a replacement for their decks, and it turns out it doesn't get banned. So it is a very exciting time overall. I like to compare it to like the NFL draft or something like that, where everybody is speculating on what's gonna happen. All right, guys. So with that out of the way, come with me. Let's go ahead and take a look at these 5 cards that I'm pretty sure you're going to agree with me need to get banned, and let's get started. Very well. At number 1, I think we need to put Cashier Fenrir to 1. The reason why is this card is just so splashable, it's kind of ridiculous. So you have a monster that is 2400 attack, 2400 defense, can special summon itself if you control no monsters, so it's a great turn 1 card you can run 3 of, so most likely you will see it a lot. But not only that, is once you special summon it, if your opponent declares an attack or activates an effect, this thing can banish something your opponent controls, so it punishes you basically just for playing the game. I think because this card is so splashable and is able to get a copy of itself regardless of the archetype that you're playing it in, I think that's just a little too much. If it didn't have the ability to search another copy of itself, I wouldn't be so against this card being at 3, but the fact that in one game you realistically can see all 3 of them, I think that's just a little too much. We've been abused by this card for too long, so I think this card needs to go back down to 1. In at number 2, we have Albion, the Sanctifier Dragon. Now, the reason why I think this card should be banned is the fact that there's other cards like Gimmick Puppet Nightmare, DD Orthoros, and Ra's Disciple that are able to, pretty much lock your opponent from being able to play certain cards. And I don't think this is very, very healthy for the game. We have cards like Branded Expulsion that did the same thing, and then they went to the ban list because of that. Now they put Branded Expulsion in the ban list just to introduce another monster that did the same thing. Now, given this is a monster, it takes a little bit more work to get it onto the field, but it really accomplishes the same end, which is summon something on your opponent's side of the field that is going to lock them from being able to summon, being able to get their strategy going. And I just think that's a little bit of a cheap way of stalling your opponent and outright just making them skip their turn. There's only very few decks that can get away with not having access to special summoning or being locked to a certain type of monsters, but for the most part, most decks in the metagame right now do need to be able to play some monsters, do need to be able to put several on the field so they can get their plays off. I think Albion the Sanctifier Dragon can go to the ban list and the game will be better off without him. And at number 3, I think Hot Red Dragon Archfiend King Calamity needs to be banned. Very simple. This is just a card that makes your opponent skip his or her turn. It's that simple. There's really not much to talk about. I mean, this is just a turn skip. Not to mention that the thing has 4,000 attack and 3,500 defense. I mean, this thing is a monster. You're able to drop this on the field, your opponent can't play Yu-Gi-Oh! And I don't think that's healthy for the game. One thing is trying to navigate through difficult situations and, being able to outmaneuver your opponent, but another is just when you outright are not allowed to play the game for 1 turn. And we know Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not a game of attrition or a game of resources like Magic the Gathering or Pokemon. No, you can win or lose a Yu-Gi-Oh! Match in 1 or 2 turns. So a turn is huge. You do not want to just have a card that can outright make your opponent skip his or her turn. So I think Red Hot Dragon Archfiend King Calamity needs to go to the ban list. Ban, maybe, I don't know, a route of the card so it's not that broken, but as of right now, we don't need this in the game. And at number 2, guys, this one I had to think a little bit about it because I feel like there's 2 cards that could fight for the number 1 spot, but I think at number 2 I'm gonna go ahead and put Eradicator Epidemic Virus. Now the reason why is very simple. I mean, the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Is divided into 3 different main type of cards. You have monsters, you have traps, and then you have spells. That is the 3 pillars of deck building. And then you have your extra deck, and then you have subclasses of cards like quick play, continuous, all that stuff. But the 3 main pillars is monsters, traps, and spells. And this card right here allows you to outright shut your opponent off of 2 of those 3 pillars, whether traps or spells, for 3 turns. You activate this thing, you tribute 1 dark monster with 2500 attack or more, which in reality that is not that hard to do. I mean, you're talking about a dark magician. In today's Yu-Gi-Oh, it's so easy to drop a dark monster with 2500 attack or more. So you drop them on the field, then you tribute that, and then for the next 3 turns, your opponent has to destroy not only cards in his or her hand, but it's also on the field. And under, going forward, every single card of that type they bring out or they draw, it has to be destroyed immediately. And almost, I want to say, more than 50% of strategies, even a bigger number, probably more like 80% of strategies, they all need spell cards to get themselves going. Now, traps, not as common in the game for sure as spells, but almost every major deck needs some kind of spell either to draw or to activate cards in their engine to get going. So a card that can outright just shut 2 of the 3 pillars of the game is not healthy for the game. Now, given, I feel Eradicator was kind of an answer to a bigger problem. It was one of those cards that, as dark attribute decks become very popular, almost all the best decks are dark attribute. This card was needed, kind of like checks and balances to even out the game a little bit, but it's gotten to the point where you see it in most decks, and if it gets going, it gets going. So I think this card, I don't know, maybe we can bring the game to a healthier state where we don't need to include such toxic cards in the metagame. But for now, I think Eradicator needs to go to the ban list for sure. And at number 1, guys, I think a lot of us are thinking the same thing. Kashtira Arise Heart needs to be gone. The reason why is because this card has had such a huge impact in the metagame, it's ridiculous. Literally every deck that goes to a locals or a regionals or some kind of tournament needs to have something prepared because you will encounter this card. And not only that, but it's one of those ridiculous Yu-Gi-Oh cards that do a bunch of stuff. So, to get started, if something gets banished, it attaches whatever gets banished to itself. So of course your cards are going to be getting banished, and of course they're not going to hit the graveyard because your opponent is going to take them. Not only that, but it becomes like a macrocosmos where everything that hits the graveyard gets banished instead. That right there kills any graveyard reliant deck and any deck that needs their graveyard just for small plays, but regardless, you have no graveyard basically. And the other one, just the ability to banish your opponent's cards. Yeah, you have to detach 3 materials, but with the ability to attach your opponent's cards to itself, that is not an issue. And Kashtiras do a ridiculous amount of banishing, so you are going to be able to attach many cards to this card to pay for cost. And not only that, once you activate the quick effect to banish something your opponent controls, you don't even get to just banish it. You banish it face down, and if you're not aware, banishing face down is the type of banishing that you don't get back. There's no coming back from a banish face down. So I mean, like I said, this card is just ridiculous. Kaijus are making a huge comeback just because of cards like this. Your opponent would sometimes end up in, before they would end up in 1 or 2 cards like this, so you could use something like Lava Golem, or even if they try to populate the field, something like Sphere Mode. But the game was changing back and forth to the point where sometimes they will only end up with a Kashtira Rice Heart, so then you saw a bunch of Kaijus making a comeback. Just the fact, like I said, that this card really changed the way people side deck for tournaments is ridiculous. And I mean, this really is probably the most powerful boss monster in the game right now. It's just too much. I think other boss monsters can't compete with something like this, and how easy you can get it onto the field. So just for that, I think maybe Kashtira can get some support later on with something that is not as cracked as this. But for now, I think Rice Heart needs to go. Alright guys, so again, thank you for taking the time to watch my videos. I really appreciate it, guys. Shout out to my friend. He made the intro for my videos. That really cool Relinquished, Thousand Eyes Idol and Golden Eyes Restrict intro that you guys saw at the beginning. That is really cool. I'm gonna post this information down in the comments. If you need any work done, hit my boy up. He's very talented. And again, guys, thank you for taking the time to watch my videos. I really appreciate it, and I'll be catching you in the next one.